Maya Carter walked into the building with slow steps. Her heart was beating fast. This was the training center on planet Varan Prime. The building was huge and made of dark stone. Everything looked ancient and powerful. The Varani people had been warriors for thousands of years. They were famous across many planets for being strong and disciplined. They were tall, almost 8 feet high, with thick fur covering their bodies. Their fur was gray, silver, or black. They had sharp eyes that looked like predator animals. When they looked at Maya, she felt very small. Maya was the first human ever allowed to see their training grounds. The Varani thought humans were weak. They said humans were too soft and too emotional. Commander Threcknell was the training master. He had made it very clear that he did not want Maya there, but the Galactic Council had ordered him to allow one human observer. The training hall was massive. It looked like an arena from ancient Earth. 50 young Varani stood in perfect lines. They were cubs, which meant they were young, maybe like teenagers on Earth. They stood completely still. Their faces showed no emotion. An instructor named Corvin was shouting orders at them in the Varani language. His voice was harsh and loud. The cubs moved together like machines. Every movement was exact and controlled. Maya stood at the side and watched. She had a notebook and was writing things down. Her job was simple. Watch the training. Learn about Varani culture. Report back to Earth Command. Nothing more. She was not supposed to interfere or speak to anyone unless they spoke to her first. The cubs were doing physical exercises. They ran, they jumped. They fought against practice dummies. They lifted heavy weights. Everything was about strength and speed and power. Maya noticed that the adult Varani never praised the cubs. They only shouted when someone made a mistake. The cubs never smiled. They never talked to each other. They just followed orders. After 2 hours, Corvin called for a water break. The cubs moved to the side of the hall where water containers were placed. They drank quickly and silently. Maya noticed something strange. One small cub was sitting alone, away from the others. He was not drinking water. He was holding his left arm in an odd way, like it hurt. His fur was lighter than the others, almost gold-colored. The other cubs acted like he did not exist. Nobody looked at him. Nobody spoke to him. Maya felt something inside her chest tighten. She knew that feeling. It was the same feeling she got when she saw someone suffering alone. Her training told her to stay back. Do not interfere, but her instincts were stronger than her training. She walked across the hall to where the small cub sat. She knelt down beside him so she was at his eye level. The cub looked up at her with wide, shocked eyes. His ears went flat against his head. Maya spoke softly. "Hello, are you okay?" The cub did not answer. He just stared at her. His mouth opened a little, but no sound came out. No adult had ever spoken to him with kindness before. He did not know what to do. Maya pointed at his arm. "Does your arm hurt?" Before the cub could say anything, Corvin's voice exploded across the hall. "Human! Get away from the trainee now." But something unexpected happened. 3 other cubs had left their positions. They were walking toward Maya. Then 5 more cubs started moving. Then 10, then 20. Within seconds, almost half of the young Varani had abandoned their water break and surrounded Maya. They formed a circle around her. Their eyes were bright and curious. They were looking at her like she was the most interesting thing they had ever seen. The adult Varani stood frozen. Their mouths were open in shock. This had never happened before. Not in 3,000 years of history. Cubs never broke formation during training. They never disobeyed their instructors. And they certainly never approached an outsider, especially not a human. Commander Threcknell came down from the observation platform. His face was angry. His claws made clicking sounds on the stone floor as he walked. When he reached Maya, his voice was dangerously quiet. "Lieutenant Carter, explain what you have done." Maya looked up at him. She was still kneeling on the floor. Around her, the cubs were pressed close, trying to get near her. She could feel their warm breath. She could hear their hearts beating fast. "I did not do anything, Commander. I just asked if he was okay. You disrupted the training. You broke our protocols. You made the cubs abandon their discipline. With respect, sir, I think they did that themselves." Threcknell looked at the cubs surrounding Maya. His expression was confused now, not just angry. He had trained thousands of young Varani in his life. He had never seen them act like this. They were supposed to be emotionless, controlled, obedient, but right now they looked excited. They looked happy. They looked like children who had just discovered something wonderful. All cubs returned to formation. Corvin shouted. His voice cracked like a whip. The cubs did not move. They stayed around Maya. Some of them reached out and touched her uniform with their clawed fingers. They were gentle, careful not to hurt her. One small female cub with copper-colored fur spoke up. Her voice was quiet and nervous. Is it true that humans have no claws or sharp teeth? Maya smiled. Yes, that is true. We are not very strong compared to you. Then how do you survive? Another cub asked. We help each other. We work together. We use our minds and our tools. But you are so small, the copper-furred cub said. Are you not afraid all the time? Maya thought about that question. Sometimes I am afraid, but being afraid does not mean being weak. It means being smart enough to know when you need help. The cubs looked at each other. This was a new idea to them. In Varani culture, showing fear was the worst thing possible. Fear meant weakness. Weakness meant failure. Threknal made a low growling sound. Enough. Cubs, you will return to formation immediately or you will all be punished. Slowly, reluctantly, the cubs moved away from Maya. But as they walked back to their positions, they kept looking over their shoulders at her. The small injured cub, the one Maya had first approached, was the last to leave. He looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. It was hope mixed with sadness. Maya stood up. Her knees hurt from kneeling on the stone floor. Threknal was staring at her with an expression that was hard to understand. You will come with me, Lieutenant. The council needs to hear about this. As Maya followed him out of the training hall, she looked back one last time. All 50 cubs were watching her leave. And for the first time since she had arrived on Varen Prime, she saw some of them smile. The council room was dark and cold. The walls were made of black stone. Banners hung from the ceiling, showing symbols of old battles and victories. Maya stood in the center of the room. 7 Varani commanders sat in high chairs around her. They looked down at her like judges in a court. Their eyes glowed in the dim light. Their claws scraped against the stone armrests. Commander Threknal spoke first. His voice echoed in the chamber. Our training methods have existed for 3,000 years. They have not changed. They work. You have been here for 3 days and you have already caused chaos. The cubs must learn discipline above everything else. You have taught them to break rules. Maya kept her voice calm and respectful. Commander, I did not teach them anything. The cubs made their own choice to come to me. Cubs do not make choices. This shout came from General Vextar. She was a female Varani with silver fur. Her fur was standing up, showing her anger. They follow the path we set for them. They become warriors. This is the Varani way. This is how it has always been. And the injured cub? Maya asked. The one with the hurt arm? What happens to him? The room became silent. Nobody spoke. Finally, Threknal answered. His voice was heavy and tired. His name is Kyle. He will be moved to support duties when his training ends. He cannot keep up with the other cubs. He is not fast enough or strong enough. Is he slow because he is injured or because nobody has helped him heal properly? Another commander leaned forward. His name was Drokan. His face had many scars. His eyes were hard like stone. You assume too much, human. You have been here for only 3 days. You think you understand our ways better than we do? We have trained warriors for millennia. Earth has been in space for less than 100 years. What can you possibly teach us? Maya took a deep breath. Sir, I do not claim to understand your ways. But I do understand children. Those cubs that came to me were not looking for a stranger. They were looking for someone who would see them. Really see them. Not just as future soldiers, but as individuals. The argument continued for hours. The commanders were angry and confused. Their entire system had been built on one idea. Emotion makes you weak. Attachment makes you vulnerable. Every cub must become the same kind of warrior, strong and alone. But the cubs had responded to Maya with an energy and excitement they had never shown their own teachers. This did not make sense to the Varani. It challenged everything they believed. A younger commander named Shirek spoke up. She had been quiet until now. The cubs have been different since the human arrived. They train harder. They focus better during exercises. But they also look happy sometimes when they think we are not watching. How is this possible? Maya chose her words carefully. She knew she was walking on dangerous ground. Maybe happiness and strength are not opposites. Maybe they work together. Humans form strong bonds with each other. We care about our friends and family. but we still fight fiercely when we need to. We fight harder because we have something worth protecting. Attachment creates weakness, Drokan said firmly. If a warrior cares too much about their companions, they will hesitate in battle. They will make mistakes trying to save someone who should be left behind. Or maybe they will fight harder to make sure nobody needs to be left behind. Maya replied. Threknall raised his hand for silence. Enough, we will not solve this today. Lieutenant Carter, you will be allowed to continue your observations, but you will not interfere with training again. The cubs must learn strength, not softness. If you break this rule, you will be sent back to Earth immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Commander. You are dismissed. Maya left the council chamber. Her legs felt shaky. That had been intense. As she walked down the hallway, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Commander Shirek following her. Lieutenant Carter, may I speak with you privately? Of course, Commander. They walked to a quiet corner. Shirek looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then she spoke in a low voice. I have been an instructor for 15 years. I have trained hundreds of cubs, but I have never seen them respond to anyone the way they responded to you today. Why did they come to you? Maya thought about how to answer. I think they were lonely. I think they wanted someone to see them as more than just future warriors. Children need to feel valued for who they are, not just for what they can become. But we do value them. We train them. We feed them. We give them discipline and purpose. Do you ever tell them they did something good? Do you ever ask them how they feel? Do you ever let them just be children? Shirek's tail swished back and forth. Maya had learned this meant Varani was thinking deeply. No, we believe praise makes cubs weak. We believe emotions cloud judgment. We believe childhood must be left behind quickly so they can become strong adults. What if you are making them hard instead of strong? There is a difference, Shirek did not answer. She just looked at Maya for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly and walked away. The next morning, Maya returned to the training hall. She had been ordered not to interfere, so she stood quietly at the side. The cubs were already in formation, but she noticed their ears moved toward her when she entered. They were aware of her presence even though they did not turn their heads. Corvin was drilling them through combat moves. He showed them how to strike, how to block, how to move quickly. The cubs copied his movements. But Maya noticed something. During the break, the cubs did not rush away from each other like before. They stayed in small groups. They talked quietly, and several of them kept glancing toward where Maya stood. Little Kale was still at the back of the formation. He was still holding his arm carefully, but now 2 other cubs stood near him. They were not ignoring him anymore. By the end of the training session, Maya noticed the adult instructors were watching the cubs differently too. They looked confused. Something had changed in the cubs, and the adults did not understand what it was. That evening, Maya was eating dinner alone in the guest quarters. Someone knocked on her door. She opened it and found Commander Shirek standing there. May I come in? Yes, of course. Shirek entered and sat down. She looked uncomfortable. I have been thinking about what you said, about children needing to feel valued. I went back through our historical records today. I found something interesting. What did you find? 3,000 years ago, before we became a great empire, we trained our young differently. Cubs learned in family groups. They played together. They were allowed to show emotion. Our warriors were still fierce, but they fought for each other, not just for glory. Then we had a great war. We nearly lost. Our leaders decided that emotion was the reason we almost failed. So they changed everything. They made training harder. They removed all attachment. They created the system we have now. And you have been successful, Maya said. Yes. We have been successful, but success is not the same as happiness. I see the cubs now, after just 1 day of contact with you, and they look more alive than any group I have trained before. This troubles me. Everything I was taught says I am seeing weakness, but it does not look like weakness. It looks like hope. Maya sat down across from Shirek. Can I ask you something personal? When you were a cub, were you happy? Shirek's ears went flat. She was quiet for a long time. No, I was not happy. I was determined. I was disciplined. But I was not happy. And I have never been happy in all my years of service. I did not know happiness was something I was supposed to feel. Everyone deserves to feel happy sometimes. Even warriors, Shirek stood up. I will speak to Commander Threknall. I will tell him I believe your method should be studied more carefully. I cannot promise anything will change, but I will try. After Shirek left, Maya sat alone in her room. She thought about the cubs. She thought about Kale with his injured arm. She thought about how they had all rushed to her, hungry for just a small moment of kindness. And she made a decision. Even if the council sent her home, she would do everything she could to help those cubs while she was still here. 3 days after the council meeting, Maya was called to Commander Threknall's office. She walked there expecting bad news. She thought they were going to send her home to Earth. But when she entered his office, his expression was strange. He looked tired and confused. "Sit down, Lieutenant Carter." Maya sat in the chair across from his desk. She waited. Threknall pushed a paper across the desk to her. "The Cubs have submitted a petition. In 3,000 years of Varani history, trainees have never submitted a petition. They do not have that right. But they did it anyway. Do you know what they are asking for?" Maya shook her head. "They are asking for you to be allowed to teach them, not as an observer, as an instructor." All 50 Cubs signed this paper with their own blood. That is the highest sign of commitment in our culture. They are willing to stake their honor on this request. Maya felt her heart jump. "Commander, I am honored, but I am not qualified to teach Varani combat techniques. I would not know where to start." Threknall leaned back in his chair. "The Cubs are not asking you to teach them combat. They are asking you to teach them what you know. Human methods, human ideas. The council had a vote last night. It was very close, but they have agreed to allow you to conduct supplemental training sessions. You will have 1 hour each day with the Cubs. Corvin and the other instructors will remain in charge of physical combat training, but you will teach them whatever you think they need to learn. Do you accept this responsibility?" Maya's mind was racing. This was an incredible opportunity, and a terrifying one. "Yes, Commander. I accept. Do not make me regret this decision, Lieutenant." The next morning, Maya walked into the training yard. Her hands were shaking a little. She had stayed up all night planning what to say. The 50 Cubs were standing at attention in perfect formation, but she could see excitement in their eyes. The adult instructors stood along the walls watching with suspicion. Threknall's voice boomed across the yard. "Lieutenant Carter has been granted authority to conduct supplemental training. You will show her respect. Begin." Maya walked to the center of the yard. She looked at all the young faces staring at her. "Okay, first thing, everyone sit down." Confusion rippled through the formation. Cubs never sat during training. It was not allowed. They looked at their regular instructors, unsure what to do. Corvin started to step forward, but Threknall stopped him with a raised hand. Little Kale, the injured cub, was the first to sit. He lowered himself to the ground and looked up at Maya. One by one, the other cubs followed. Soon all 50 were sitting on the ground, looking up at her with wide, curious eyes. "Better," Maya said with a smile. "Now I have a question. Why do you train to be warriors?" A large cub with dark striped fur spoke immediately. "To become strong. To serve the Varani Empire. To honor our ancestors who fought before us." Good answer. "What is your name?" "Zek, ma'am." "Nice to meet you, Zek. Now, second question. What do you want to be when you finish your training?" The cubs looked at each other. The question seemed to confuse them. A small female with copper-colored fur raised her hand slowly. "We will be warriors, ma'am. That is what we are meant to be." "But is that what you want?" The small female blinked. "I do not understand the question, ma'am." Maya sat down on the ground herself. She crossed her legs and made herself comfortable. Behind her, she heard several adult Varani make shocked sounds. Instructors never sat with trainees. It was breaking every rule, but Maya ignored them. "Let me tell you a story. My name is Maya. When I was your age, I wanted to be a pilot. I loved the idea of flying between stars. But my parents wanted me to become a doctor like them. So I tried medical school. I hated it. Then I tried engineering. Hated that too. Finally, I joined the military and discovered I was good at understanding different people and cultures. That is how I ended up here talking to you. So I will ask again. What do you want?" The silence stretched out for a long time. Then Kale spoke. His voice was so quiet Maya almost missed it. "I want to build things. Fix things. Before my arm was injured, I liked taking apart the practice weapons and putting them back together. I liked understanding how they worked." "That is amazing, Kale," Maya said warmly. "Engineers are just as important as warriors. Maybe even more important." "But I am defective," Kyle said. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, broke Maya's heart. "I cannot fight as well as the others." I am useless and you are not defective. You are different, and different is not bad. Listen, all of you. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest. We do not have claws or thick skin or any natural weapons, but we became successful anyway. Do you know why? Why? Several cubs asked at once. Because we learned that everyone being the same is actually a weakness. We need people who are good at different things. We need soldiers and scientists. We need builders and healers. We need artists and engineers and diplomats. A society that only values one type of person is fragile. It breaks easily. Zek raised his hand. But the Varani way has worked for thousands of years. Has it worked? Or has it just continued? There is a difference between surviving and thriving. For the next hour, Maya did something completely new. She talked with the cubs, not at them, with them. She asked them about their interests. She asked about their fears and dreams. She learned that one cub wanted to study the stars. Another loved cooking and creating new food. A third was fascinated by medicine and wanted to be a healer. Slowly, the cubs began to relax. They started talking to each other too, not just to Maya. They laughed at jokes. They debated ideas. They forgot to sit in rigid positions and leaned forward, engaged and excited. The adult Varani watched in stunned silence. This was not training as they understood it. There were no combat drills, no tests of strength, no shouting or punishment, and yet they could not deny what they were seeing. The cubs were more alert and focused than they had been in months of traditional training. When the hour ended, the cubs stood up reluctantly. They clearly wanted to continue talking. Maya smiled at them. Tomorrow we will do some physical training, but in a different way than you are used to. Trust me? Yes, Lieutenant Maya. The response came back, enthusiastic and loud. As the cubs left the yard, Corvin approached Maya. His expression was disapproving. You did not teach them anything useful. You just talked. I taught them that their thoughts and feelings matter. That is very useful. Feelings do not win battles. Maybe not, but they give you a reason to fight in the first place. Corvin shook his head and walked away, but Commander Shirek came over next. That was highly unusual. The cubs revealed weaknesses. They admitted to interests that have nothing to do with combat. They showed emotion freely. This is everything we have been taught to avoid. Yes, ma'am. And yet I have never seen them so engaged. What will you do tomorrow? Maya grinned. Tomorrow I will teach them that being strong does not mean being perfect. It means knowing your weaknesses and working with others to overcome them, human style. That night, Maya reviewed her plans for the next day. She had requested some equipment and the Varani had provided it without question. Ropes, climbing walls, balance beams, and various obstacles. She was going to show these cubs something they had never experienced before. She was going to show them the power of teamwork. In his quarters, Kale sat on his bed and looked at his injured arm. For the first time in months, he felt something he had not felt before. Hope. The human had called him amazing. She had said engineers were important. She had said he was not defective, just different. He repeated those words to himself as he fell asleep. In the instructor quarters, Shirek sat with Threknal. The human is changing them, she said quietly. Yes. The question is whether she is making them better or worse. I think, Shirek said slowly, that we will not know the answer until we let go of our fear long enough to really look. The cubs are happier. They are more eager to learn. They talk to each other now instead of standing in silence. Are these bad things? Threknal did not answer. He just stared out the window at the moons hanging in the night sky. Change was coming to Varen Prime, he could feel it, and he did not know if his people were ready. The next morning, the cubs arrived at the training yard and stopped in surprise. The familiar space had been transformed. There were ropes hanging from frames. Climbing walls stood at odd angles. Balance beams stretched across gaps. Obstacles were arranged in a long course that wound across the entire yard. Nothing looked like their normal training equipment. Maya stood in the center, waiting. The cubs gathered around her, their eyes full of curiosity. The adult instructors watched from the sides, their arms crossed and their expressions doubtful. Today, Maya announced, we are going to learn about teamwork, but not the kind you have been taught. You know how to fight together in formation. That is good. But today you will learn something different. You will learn how to help each other succeed. Corvin spoke up from the sidelines. Cubs must learn to succeed alone. That is how warriors survive battle. That is one way, Maya agreed. Here is another way. When you care about your teammates and understand their strengths, you can cover each other's weaknesses. That is true teamwork. She divided the cubs into teams of 5. She was very careful about who went with whom. She mixed strong cubs with weak ones, fast cubs with injured ones, confident cubs with shy ones. Kale found himself in a team with Zek, the big striped cub, Lyra, the small copper-furred female, Dax, who was excellent at climbing, and Petra, a quiet female who preferred watching to acting. Your mission, Maya explained, is to get your entire team from one end of this obstacle course to the other. But here is the important part. All 5 of you must cross the finish line within 1 minute of each other. If anyone gets left behind, the whole team fails. Speed does not matter. What matters is that you all finish together. The adult Varani exchanged looks. This went against everything they taught. Warriors were supposed to succeed individually. The weak were supposed to fall behind. That was nature. That was how you built a strong fighting force. Begin, Maya called. The first teams rushed forward with typical Varani aggression. The strong cubs charged ahead. They scaled walls easily. They jumped across gaps. They swung on ropes. They were fast and powerful. But when they reached the end of the course and looked back, they saw their slower teammates far behind, struggling. The strong cubs finished in 3 minutes. The weak cubs took 7 minutes. Team after team failed the time requirement. Frustration built. The cubs did not understand. They had completed the course. Why did it matter if everyone finished together? Zek's team approached their turn. He looked at his 4 teammates. His young mind was working through the problem. Kale cannot climb well because of his arm. Lyra is too small for the high walls. But Dax climbs very fast, and Petra sees things the rest of us miss. What should we do? Petra asked quietly. We move as one unit. Dax, you climb first and secure the ropes for the rest of us. I can carry Lyra over the rough ground if needed. Kale, you are good with knots and mechanisms. Can you make the rope anchors more secure than the other teams have? Kale stood straighter. For the first time in months, someone was asking him to use his skills. Yes, I can do that. I can make them very secure. They started the course. Instead of rushing, they moved together. When Lyra stumbled on a balance beam, Petra steadied her with a hand. When Zek struggled with a puzzle lock, Kale talked him through it step by step. Dax scouted ahead and called back warnings about loose footing. When they came to a wall too high for Lyra, Zek simply picked her up and carried her. They did not finish first. They were not the fastest. But they crossed the finish line together, all 5 within 30 seconds of each other. Maya smiled as they caught their breath. Perfect. That is exactly what I wanted to see. Now everyone, go back to the start. Let's try again. The other teams watched Zek's group with new understanding. The cubs began talking among themselves, planning. On the second attempt, more teams succeeded. By the 5th attempt, almost every team was finishing together. Something remarkable was happening. The cubs were calling to each other, encouraging and helping. The strong ones were waiting for the weak ones, not with impatience, but with offered hands and supportive words. Kyle was no longer at the back, struggling alone. He was integrated into his team. His limitations were accepted and his strengths were used. Commander Threcknell came down from the observation platform. He walked slowly to where Maya stood. His face was unreadable. He watched in silence as team after team completed the course, working together, supporting each other, succeeding as units rather than individuals. This is not our way, he said finally. No, sir, it is not, and yet, he paused. He seemed to be struggling with something. In the last war 10 years ago, we lost several battles we should have won. Our warriors fought bravely. They followed orders perfectly. But when the commanders fell in battle, the warriors did not adapt. They did not help each other. They just kept following the last orders they had received until they were overwhelmed and killed. We lost thousands of good soldiers. Maya chose her words carefully. Individual strength is important, Commander. But it is not enough. Not in modern warfare. Not in any aspect of life, really. The other council members will not accept this easily. They will say you are making our cubs weak. With respect, sir, I think I am helping them become stronger, just in a different way than you are used to. Over the following weeks, the training evolved. Maya introduced new concepts. She had cubs work in pairs where they had to trust each other completely. One cub would close their eyes and the other would guide them through obstacles using only their voice. The trust this required was terrifying for cubs who had been taught to rely only on themselves. She created scenarios where the only way to win was to protect the injured rather than leave them behind. She held strategy sessions where the quietest voices were deliberately asked to speak first. She made teams where the leader changed every 10 minutes so everyone learned both to lead and to follow. The adult instructors struggled with all of it. Corvin especially resisted every change. He saw it as weakness creeping into their proud tradition. But Commander Shirek began helping Maya. Her warrior mind recognized the tactical value of what the cubs were learning. The cubs themselves were transforming. They stood taller, not just with military discipline but with real confidence. They spoke more freely. They began solving problems creatively instead of just following standard solutions. Most remarkably, Kel became central to his peer group. His inability to fight as well as others no longer marked him as useless. Instead, his analytical mind and technical skill made him valuable. Other cubs sought his advice. They protected him in combat drills, and he rewarded that protection by finding clever solutions they would have missed. One evening, Maya was sitting in the training yard after the cubs had left. She was reviewing her notes. Commander Threcknell approached and sat down beside her. This surprised Maya. Varani commanders did not sit casually with junior officers. I received 2 reports today, he said. The first is from the Council's military analysts. They have been studying your training methods for the past month. Maya's heart sank. And they want to shut down your program. They say you are making the cubs soft, too emotional, too dependent on each other. They believe this will create weak warriors. Commander, He held up a hand. Let me finish. The second report is from the cubs' medical examiner. She has been tracking various health metrics. Since you began training, injuries during practice have decreased by 40%. Signs of psychological stress have dropped by 60%. The cubs are sleeping better and eating better. And most significantly, they are now scoring higher on tactical simulation tests than any trainee group in the last decade. Maya blinked in surprise. They are? Yes, because they are learning to think, not just fight. They adapt to changing situations. They cover each other's weaknesses. They find creative solutions. The council is divided on what to do. Half want to stop your program. Half want to expand it. But I am not divided. This program continues. Thank you, Commander. Do not thank me yet, Lieutenant Carter. In 2 weeks, there will be a formal evaluation. Representatives from other worlds will come to observe. They will judge whether your methods have merit. That will be the real test. If the cubs fail, your program ends and you return to Earth. If they succeed, we may be looking at a revolution in how we train our young. After Threkenal left, Maya sat alone in the darkening yard. 2 weeks. She had 2 weeks to prepare the cubs for the most important demonstration of their lives. She looked up at the stars and thought about Earth, far away. She thought about all the human children she had known, laughing and playing and learning together. And she knew what she had to do. The next morning, she gathered the cubs. We have 2 weeks until a very important test. Representatives from many worlds will come to watch you. They will decide if what we have been doing here is valuable or foolish. So I need to ask you a question. Do you trust me? 50 voices answered as one. Yes, Lieutenant Maya. Then let's show them what you have learned. Let's show them that strength and kindness can exist together. Let's show them the real meaning of being a warrior. The transport ship came down through the clouds like a falling star. Maya stood beside Commander Threcknell on the landing platform, watching it descend. Her stomach was tight with nervousness. Today would determine everything. The ship landed with a soft hiss. The doors opened and the delegation emerged. Maya recognized several alien species from her training. There were the Quartek, tall beings made of living crystal that chimed when they moved. The Vriss, who looked like large insects with multiple arms. The Keldon, who wore special suits filled with water because they could not breathe air. And walking at the front of the group was someone Maya had not expected to see. Admiral Helen Brooks, commander of Earth's 4th Fleet, approached with a stern expression on her face. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Lieutenant Carter, you have caused quite a stir across the galaxy. Maya saluted. Admiral, I was just following my orders to observe and report. Observe, yes. Revolutionize an entire culture's training system that was not in your job description. But there was a slight warmth in her eyes that gave Maya hope. Show us what you have built here. The delegation walked to the main training hall. It was the largest space on the base. The 50 cubs were already there, standing in formation. But Maya could see the differences from 6 months ago. They stood together now, not just in lines. Their eyes were bright with confidence. Even Kale stood tall, his once injured arm now strengthened through careful exercises. Commander Threcknell stepped forward. His voice was formal and loud. Honored guests from across the Galactic Council, you will observe a tactical simulation. The Cubs have prepared a demonstration based on the historical Battle of Keldon Ridge. This battle cost the Varani Empire 3,000 warriors. Today you will see how these Cubs would approach the same situation. The holographic field activated. It showed a battlefield with mountains, valleys, and enemy positions. The Cubs had studied this battle for weeks. They knew that in the real battle, the Varani had won but suffered terrible losses. The traditional approach had been a direct frontal assault, relying on individual warrior strength to overwhelm the enemy. The simulation began. The Cubs divided into 3 units. Zek led 1 unit, Kale led another, Lyra led the third. The delegation watched closely as the scenario unfolded. The Cubs did something completely different from the traditional approach. They communicated constantly, sharing information across all 3 units. Kale's unit, which contained several of the less physically strong Cubs, used the terrain to their advantage. They set up defensive positions and fortifications that multiplied their effectiveness. Zek's unit made a feint attack, drawing enemy forces out of position. Lyra's unit, small and fast, moved around the enemy flanks and disrupted supply lines. When they engaged in direct combat, they fought as coordinated teams. The strong Cubs protected the weaker ones, who provided tactical support and strategic planning. Kale directed artillery fire with mathematical precision, compensating for his inability to fight on the front lines. When a simulated soldier was wounded, others immediately moved to cover them and pull them to safety. The simulation ended after 20 minutes. The Cubs had achieved victory, but more importantly, they had done so while sustaining minimal casualties. In the real historical battle, the Varani had lost 3,000 warriors. In this simulation, the Cubs lost fewer than 50. The silence in the observation area was complete. The delegation members looked at each other, clearly shocked by what they had just witnessed. The Vriss representative spoke first. Her mandibles clicked as she talked. That was impressive. But a simulation is not real battle. In actual combat, when they face real danger and real death, would they not freeze? Would they not abandon this teamwork and revert to individual survival instinct? Admiral Brooks stepped forward before Maya could respond. Lieutenant Carter saw real combat on Rigel 4 3 years ago. She was part of the evacuation operation when the colony came under surprise attack. Lieutenant, would you share what you observed there? Maya straightened. Yes, Admiral. Human forces were outnumbered 3 to 1. We were outgunned. By all tactical analysis, we should have been wiped out. But we held our positions for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. We did not hold because we were the strongest fighters. We held because every soldier knew that if they fell, their squad would come for them. Nobody would be left behind. That certainty made us fight harder, not softer. We had something worth protecting. Each other. An elderly Varani stepped forward from the back of the observation area. His fur was white with age. His eyes were clouded but still sharp. I am Elder Vector. I have lived for 90 years. I remember stories from my grandfather about the old ways. Before we became a great empire, he told me that our ancestors fought in clan groups. They protected each other. They valued each member for different skills. Then we had the Great War and nearly lost. Our leaders decided that emotion had made us weak. So they removed all attachment from our training. They made us into perfect individual warriors. And we have been successful ever since. But at what cost? Maya asked quietly. The elder looked at her with something like sadness. At the cost of joy, young human. At the cost of connection. At the cost of knowing why we fight beyond simple duty. I see these cubs now, and they remind me of my grandfather's stories. They fight together, they care for each other, and they are strong because of it, not despite it. Commander Shirek stood and addressed the delegation. I have fought in 17 campaigns across my career. I have seen warriors die alone, too proud to call for help. I have seen units collapse because no one trusted their companions. This human has taught our cubs something we forgot long ago. The pack is not a weakness. The pack is the whole point of being strong. Threcknell added his voice. The Varani military has operated under the same principles for 3,000 years. We have been successful. But success and excellence are not the same thing. These cubs show us what we could become if we were willing to change. The Quartek representative stepped forward. Her crystalline body chimed with each movement. The Galactic Council values strength above many things. But we also value adaptation, evolution. Species that cannot change do not survive when the universe shifts around them. What we have seen here today is evolution. Over the next 3 hours, the cubs demonstrated more of their training. They showed individual combat skills, proving they had not lost their Varani fighting abilities. They performed traditional drills with precision and power, but they also showed the new things they had learned. They worked together seamlessly. They solved complex problems as teams. They adapted to changing situations with creativity and flexibility. Most importantly, they showed something that surprised everyone. They showed emotional intelligence. When one cub made a mistake, others encouraged them instead of showing contempt. When someone succeeded, the team celebrated together. They clearly cared about each other's well-being and success. Finally, Admiral Brooks asked to speak with the cubs directly. She stood before them, her military uniform crisp and formal. "I have a question for all of you. What makes you strong?" The cubs looked at each other. Zek stepped forward first. "We are strong because we are Varani. We train hard every day. We honor our traditions and our ancestors." "That is a good answer," Brooks said. "Anyone else?" Kale moved to stand beside Zek. "We are strong because we are together. My arm is weak, but Zek's is strong. Zek struggles with complex calculations, but I can solve them. Lyra is small but very fast. Petra is quiet but sees things we miss. Alone, each of us has limits. Together we have none." Lyra joined them. "We are strong because Lieutenant Maya taught us that strength comes in many forms. Not just physical strength, but mental strength, emotional strength, the strength to ask for help, the strength to offer help, the strength to care about others." One by one, all 50 cubs moved forward. They stood shoulder to shoulder, forming a united line. In that moment, the delegation saw what Maya had created. Not weaker Varani, but enhanced ones. Warriors who had lost none of their combat ability but had gained something precious. The power of genuine connection. The Vris representative clicked her mandibles, and what Maya had learned was approval. "I believe we have seen enough to make our decision." The delegation moved to a private chamber to vote. Maya waited outside with the cubs. They were nervous but also proud. Whatever happened, they had shown their best. Kale stood beside Maya, and she put her hand on his shoulder. He looked up at her and smiled. After 30 minutes, the delegation returned. Admiral Brooks spoke for all of them. By unanimous vote, the Galactic Council approves the continuation and expansion of this training program. Furthermore, we recommend that other member species study these methods and consider how they might be adapted to their own cultures. Lieutenant Carter, you have done exceptional work here. The cubs erupted in cheers. For the first time in Varani history, trainees openly celebrated in front of their commanders. And the commanders, even Stern Corvin, allowed it. That evening, Maya sat with the cubs in the training yard one last time. They had abandoned all pretense of formal formation. They simply gathered around her like children around a teacher they loved. "Lieutenant Maya," Kale asked, "will you train the next group of cubs too?"